Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the October edition of the Casita Coalition's Hot Topics webinar series. Our topic today is small home communities. I'm Ann Wyatt, Casita Coalition board member and executive director of Smart Share Housing Solutions in San Luis Obispo. The Casita Coalition is a statewide nonprofit working to remove barriers to smaller, more affordable, and sustainable homes. Today, we'll explore 4 types of innovative small home communities, providing homes and social connection for residents sidelined by the high cost of housing in California. Before we get started, a quick thank you to our sponsors, without whom this webinar series would not be possible. Thank you to major sponsors, Meta and Wells Fargo, and to additional sponsors, Building Industry Association of the Bay Area, the law firms of Allen Matkins and Reuben, Junius and Rose, and to our most recent sponsors and premier members, RenoFi, Sonderpods, Golden Age Financial, Holland and Knight, Stowers team at CrossCountry Mortgage, and Abodu. We're also grateful for our mission-aligned webinar promotional partners working alongside us to create more equitable housing solutions. Today's presentations will be followed by a Q&A, so please use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen, not the chat, and so we can get your questions answered. With limited time, keep in mind, we may focus on general questions we believe most interest to the group at large. With that, we will get to our presenters, and we will start the day with Phil Levin, who is a founding member of Culdesac, a pioneering group creating car-free living neighborhoods. Phil has started 3 co-living spaces in the Bay Area, including Radish, a 20-person multi-generational community in Oakland. His Super Nuclear newsletter shares tips to help groups of friends co-purchase property and establish new co-living communities. Phil, glad to have you here with us. Welcome.
Thanks, Anne. It's great to be here. Great. Today I'm going to share some lessons from a small community called Radish, which I think is sort of in the theme of this presentation. So let me pull it up real quick. Great, can folks see that?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to talk about Radish. I'm going to talk about why I think Radish is a good thing and there should be more things like it. And maybe at the end, we'll talk about some of the barriers to making this happen. So Radish is something I call DIY co-living. And it's a project where a group of friends owns property together and does so in sort of a small home community. And the sort of backstory and the reason this came about is I started dating a professional behavioral scientist. And when you date a behavioral scientist, your life changes because they try to apply behavioral science to every part of your personal life. And one of the things, this is Kristen, this is my wife now. And one of the things Kristen basically said when we started dating is that we were not going to live alone together. And the reason she said this is because living alone is not a formula for making people happy. And in fact, there's a long literature of academic studies showing that one of the greatest determinants of personal happiness throughout your life is the quality and proximity of your personal relationships. So here's one famous study called the Harvard Happiness Study that tracked people over the course of 7 or 8 decades and tried to understand what made them happy or sad in their life. And here's the conclusion of the study, which is good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. And so we really tried to take this to heart in sort of how we design our living situation. And that's why we started Radish. So what Radish is that it's a 18-person, 6-building sort of mini neighborhood in Oakland. It is co-owned, so there's over 20 owners of it. It's collaboratively built and designed, and sort of here is a little map of it at the bottom. So there's a bunch of sort of small homes sort of scattered amongst a large yard with all sorts of facilities like a hot tub, a fire pit, RV for guests that want to stay. And we sort of like share this life together and share these facilities together. So something else that sort of has happened around Radish that we did not expect is I think when you create one of these, you actually get a sort of ripple effect in the wider neighborhood. And so what we've seen a lot of other people buy houses near Radish because they want to sort of participate in Radish as a third space. And it sort of has become like a community center almost for like a lot of people in the neighborhood. And here's the different houses that have been bought around Radish in the last 2 or 3 years. I sometimes call this a Shelling Point neighborhood, which is an economics term around coordinating people to like a specific place, as opposed to having them dispersed to different places. So what do we share at Radish? What does it mean to actually live together? So food, we all share food together. So we have 5 refrigerators full of food that basically anyone can come and take. Cars. So we have 18 people living there right now. We have 7 cars, which I think is probably a lower ratio of cars to people than a typical sort of group of people in this neighborhood. Outdoors, we have all these nice sort of things that we get to buy together, build together. We have a shared guest room that we sort of use, and people book this like shared guest room when people come and stay. And it turns out that like if you have your own guest room, you use it very infrequently. If you have a shared guest room, it has higher utilization. We share a big kitchen and dining room, and we're starting to now share childcare now that we have children, so babysitting, nanny care. But I think the real killer app of this sort of living is meals. And so I cook a meal once a week, and I get cooked for 6 nights a week. And we sort of have these like big, nice meals every single night that you have to put relatively little effort into, but sort of happens. And we've had this for years now. Here's a picture of our communal kitchen and living room. So we built this for the community from the ground up in our gardens. Here's some just pictures of our yard. We're actually building 2 ADUs right now on the property as well. So we're trying to take advantage of the new ADU rules. And here's our ownership structure. So we essentially have an LLC that owns the whole property. We invite anyone who wants to invest in the property, and people get returns for their investment through rents. And so there's people that live there who are investors. There's people that live there who are not investors, and there's people who are investors who don't live there. And sort of we have this like Venn diagram that everyone can participate in whatever way they want to participate. So I write about this quite a bit. If anyone's interested in creating one of these themselves, I would love to see more of these communities. It's made me very happy. It's made my community very happy. It's made my friends very happy. And I think the world would be a better place if there's more places like Radish. So a friend and I write a newsletter based on how to do things like this, where we just sort of give away all the tips and tricks. It's totally free. We just want to see more of these in the world. That's called Super Nuclear, and you can find it here. Cool. Back to you, Dan.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, thanks for that presentation. We will get some questions then to you later. And so with that, we're going to go on to our next presenter, Jonathan Russell of Bay Area Community Services. Jonathan will share some projects that use ADUs to add additional homes on existing lots for unhoused community members, creating mini communities. Jonathan, thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to learning more about what you're doing.
Thanks so much, Anne. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. So happy to be here with fellow travelers, I feel, in this, what is certainly a movement we're happy to be a part of. As Anne said, my name is Jonathan Russell. I'm the Chief Strategy and Impact Officer for Bay Area Community Services, more commonly and much more simply known as BACS, which is our acronym. And we are, I'll give a bit of background kind of on who we are as an agency, which I think really helps to set the perspective around our mission to provide housing for unhoused residents here in the Bay. So we are a nonprofit agency providing homeless and housing services, as well as behavioral health, community-based mental health and wellness services throughout the East Bay. We were born in Oakland just under 70 years ago, 1953, and have been here ever since. We're now in 6 counties, still primarily in Alameda County, And we're unique as a nonprofit, really, that we provide what are often two sets of services or two different systems of care: mental health, behavioral health, and then also homelessness and housing. So we really are always driving to be one integrated agency and pull those systems of care together to meet the needs of residents that are currently unhoused in our community. So in my role, one of the things I focus on is our real estate development strategy. We have long been what I was always called a scrappy housing developer, or rather our CEO, Jamie, first described it to me as that. And that really began for us decades ago with a really visionary early CEO of the agency, where we've long provided services throughout Alameda County through what were originally, back in the 60s when they were opened and have a very 60s naming, creative living centers, which were really designed to be community access points for folks to come, develop relationships, get their needs met, get connected to other resources. And those have really evolved into what are the primary access points for getting behavioral health services in the community in Alameda County. So they're now called wellness centers. And our CEO, years ago, long before I was here, really had this vision to have homes and wellness centers and community spaces in each area that we operated those wellness centers. So they started buying single family homes as an agency and providing co-living environments for individuals, mostly that had behavioral health needs, to live together in an environment where the rent was little to none. So it was funded by the agency. This model really, which developed organically for us, has really grown and exploded over the past, I would say, 5 to 7 years as the agency has grown. There is a program that I'm sure many on this call have heard of called HomeKey, which was a really innovative program the state put forward to create a lot of money during the pandemic to acquire and renovate existing housing stock to create permanent, deeply affordable housing for individuals experiencing homelessness. So very honored as an agency to have been the first awardee in the first round of HomeKey 2 years ago of doing scattered site single family homes. So we were awarded a project in partnership with the city of Oakland, first of its kind in the state, to purchase 15 single family homes in Oakland. And it was a whirlwind, I will say that, in terms of how quickly we were out there on the market finding homes. And so we were able to buy that many homes and have produced about 100 units of scattered site, neighborhood-based, deeply affordable housing for folks exiting homelessness, which is exciting. And I think that's where really for us, this connects with this, what I would call we call it our supported independent living homes, but really a kind of a 2.0 version of that for us, which has really been expanding into thinking, okay, now we're buying scattered site single family homes to convert them to beautiful co-living environments. What else can we do with these properties in terms of infill development and adding even more units? So this actually came to us through one of the purchases of our homes that already had an ADU a couple of years ago. And we thought, wow, that's great. That's just a whole other additional unit space on site to where we can create even more housing. And so now, in what I call our 2.0 model, we're actually looking for homes and purchasing homes with an eye toward added development. So reserving some funding to put 1 to maybe even 2 ADU units in addition to the home on the property. So really maximizing that opportunity to do infill, to create more units, and as is the theme of this meeting today, to create more community opportunity in these already really communally focused homes. So you know anything about affordable housing development, which I'm sure many folks on here do know, much of it is focused on, certainly in the homeless housing, so housing for folks exiting homelessness, on kind of the big development, right? Let's develop a new project from the ground up, which we all know is extremely expensive, or let's convert existing hotels or complexes to affordable housing, which we think is great. But our philosophy is really, if I was to sum it up in one sentence, we're really committed to saying we can't give up the neighborhoods to unaffordable housing, which in many ways, if we're going to think of affordable housing development, primarily in terms of creating more large complexes that are deeply subsidized, in some ways we can really risk creating a resegregated environment for many folks that are being pushed out of the neighborhoods, certainly here in the East Bay, where we know those are the most at risk, the most displaced, the most gentrified communities. So our philosophy is really to say, we also need to hold on to single family homes and purchase those and create neighborhood-based deeply affordable housing. So that's really where this vision of creating ADUs on existing single family home lots, leveraging zoning changes, leveraging good sized lots to really add and create a scattered site model. So one kind of example of that I will share that we're currently pursuing that I think is the first of its kind for us in doing this from the outset is we were awarded what's called a Family Homelessness Challenge Grant from the state of California in Monterey County, which is a newer county for us to be working in, where we proposed a project that is to provide family homelessness housing for individuals by purchasing single family homes and then adding up to multiple two bedroom ADUs on lots in Monterey County. So we're very excited to have received that funding, which will be able to serve up to 3 families, small families or varying size families, depending on the size of the single family home we purchase, to then do development and work with a partner to add ADUs. So that's our model. We're really excited about it. We're new to the ADU part of it and the development. So I'm certainly happy to be a part of this coalition to really learn and glean as we dive into it. But I think that's what we do. And that's what we're really excited to continue to push forward upon. So thank you so much for including us and look forward to some discussion thereafter.
Thanks. And Jonathan, just before we get into more questions and introduce the next speaker, it may help us as we think of those to clearly understand where you are in the small housing space. Mm-hmm. I didn't quite understand the numbers. It sounded like 100 homes were in play, but how many have you already succeeded? Are you in process with ADUs along with?
Yeah, so we have about just under 200 units of deeply affordable housing that is in the scattered site way. So primarily within single family homes throughout the East Bay. Okay. We have currently, I think there are 6 to 8 homes that either have ADUs here in Oakland or we're actively looking to add them to in those lots. So that's about, it's definitely at this point, kind of the next horizon for us is really saying, okay, we've got these units, we've got these lots, let's now do infill development. But it's really more, to be totally honest, a forward-looking thing to say, wow, okay, now let's not purchase another home that doesn't include the space and opportunity to add additional units in the form of ADUs or garage conversions to junior ADUs and the rest. So this project in Monterey County will be our first where from the beginning the project is funded to be a both and home acquisition plus ADU development. So so right now it's a smaller portion of our lot, but we're kind of doing the current footprint analysis to say, okay, of all of what we currently have, where can we just add to our existing stock and make that a part of the model going forward? So
got it.
We're newbies to that component.
Right, that's helpful as we set up for the discussion later and questions for you to kind of understand where you are in that continuum in the space. So thanks, we'll look forward to, I'm sure there'll be a lot more questions later. Wonderful to hear what you're doing. With that, we are going to jump forward to our Innovation Corner segment, and I'm going to introduce Jared Basler. He is here with us. And Jared advises the Casita Coalition on membership and strategic initiatives. Founder of the ADU Coalition, Jared works with industry professionals to implement policy reforms. His San Diego-based design firm is active in ADU production, including creating innovative mini communities through the city's ADU density bonus program. Jared, looking forward to hearing more about what you're doing and your projects in San Diego. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Ann. So as we talk, as Jonathan just got done talking about, these opportunities that we have statewide to add ADUs and create, some small communities out of those single family homes, adding ADUs, that kind of thing. We're going to go to kind of what's becoming the kind of gold standard for how we take that much further. And so City of San Diego, responding to AB 671, back in 2019, 2020, put together a plan for an ADU bonus program that's similar to our density bonus program that was already in place in San Diego and then became state law. And so the premise of the program is that rather than providing incentives monetarily through subsidized, subsidies for affordable housing, they provide additional density. So in this case, an additional ADU for every ADU that's deed restricted. So the way that this plays out is you get whatever ADUs you get by right per state law. So a single family home, you get your one ADU. We're not doing JADUs because those are, require owner occupancy, but you get your first ADU and then you go into the bonus program. And so your first ADU under the bonus program is deed restricted at 15 years at moderate or 10 years at low income. And then you get a bonus market rate ADU on top of it. Now, outside of kind of transit areas, that's where it caps. So you go from 1 to 4. Inside transit areas, there's no limit to how many ADUs you can produce under this. So, a typical, obviously you still are limited by things like floor area ratio and the other development standards. But what ends up happening is, on a typical 5,000 square foot lot, you can get really creative, or 6,000 square foot lot, you can get really creative on how many units you can add. And there's basically 2 different ways of doing it. You can either go the route of the building code and basically create a little apartment community, or the more kind of cost-effective ways to stay within the California residential code and keep no more than 2 units attached to each other. So essentially you create a series of duplexes on these lots, and you're able to, on a 6,000 square foot lot using residential code, you're able to get to about 6 units altogether. So you have your single family home, do a conversion, and then do 2 duplexes in the back. And so what this provides is it provides an opportunity for these kind of very site specific, but infill communities in these formerly single family lots, single family homes. This program took effect in January of 2021. If you know of, as Jonathan said, if you know affordable housing, you know that typically when programs go into place, you don't see units come online for 3 to 5 years, just because of the way that typical subsidized affordable housing is financed and the complexities that go along with that. So going into effect in January of 21, we're seeing the first few projects rolling out right now. And those are having anywhere from 2 to 4 deed restricted units. The program as it sat at the end of June had a total of 46 projects that are in the process and have over 490 units that are being produced in this program. These are ADUs, so they follow all the same state ADU rules, development impact fees, waived under 750 square feet. And that we've seen both the extremes of, some homeowners, small developers only really wanting to go from 1 to 4. We've seen one that has taken about a 20,000 square foot multifamily lot and is creating an apartment community of a duplex, and then 144 ADUs on top of that. So it's creating essentially 75 deed restricted units. That gets to the real extreme. But on a typical project is typically going from 1 single family home to 6 units. And by using that residential code, you're able to create communal space with tenants that are also, you have the deed restrictions for, on a 1 to 6, you have deed restrictions on 2 units, but they're like for like. So it's not like, some affordable housing projects where you get the the worst units are the ones that go to the deed restrictions, or the smallest units. It has to be like for like. This is all administered through the Housing Commission, which basically just does a income verification. But other than that, it's very a fairly simple program. The first project rolled out. So the first project was occupied in July. So 18 months from the date the program went into effect, we're seeing units come online. The two deed restricted units are being currently occupied by military personnel, as down here in San Diego we have a lot of those, and so it's a really great opportunity to provide kind of a rolling stock of deed restricted housing at both moderate and low income levels, and then on top of that, so that's where the program ends. When we're talking, sorry if you hear some scratching. I have a cat that's desperately trying to get in here that I'm not going to let in because that would be even more disruptive. But talking about kind of the highest and best use and how we're always looking for, developers are looking for how they can maximize the property. And so you typically see when you have when you buy a single family home and you're going to do a project like this, and you're waiting for permits, it can be difficult to then try to rent out the primary while you're while you're waiting for those permits to come through. And so this is not a part of the program, but talking about highest and best use and things that developers can do in order to make a bigger impact and really help provide additional housing is we now have my developer client that I work with on these projects is now working with Jewish Family Services to provide refugee housing. And that's going to be transitional refugee housing in the primaries while we're waiting for the permits to be issued by the city. And it's really exciting. It's a kind of, we have refugees coming from all over the world. And it's something that there's desperate need for this transitional housing. Up until very recently, Jewish Family Services was utilizing Airbnb credits to get the transitional housing. And then once those run out, they have to pay for that transitional housing in a way that cuts funds from other programs they can provide. So by developers offering up their homes that are sitting vacant while you're waiting for permits, this provides an opportunity to have multiple families come through. And so really exciting thing this week. On Wednesday, the first two properties were moved into by a couple of different refugee families here. And it's great to see it actually coming to fruition, because this is something we've been really looking for, how we can get the highest and best use and give back. And there's plenty of these organizations out there that need this kind of housing. It's not just it's something that it's a lot easier than you would think to actually participate in this kind of a solution. So I'm sure we'll get into more questions about that later, but Ann, I'll kick it back over to you.
Thank you, Jared. Before we introduce our final speaker, Jared, I just had one primary question to you, again, related to sort of scale here in activities. I heard you say you've got 490 units in play in 46 projects. And that may have struck some others, much like myself. We usually think of an ADU as a unit or two in the backyard, but quick math shows, this is more than 10 units per project. So just help us parse that. Are we on mostly multifamily parcels here getting a lot of ADU credits, or how do we get more than 10 units per project?
Yeah. So what I'll say is there are a couple of projects that are in the 20s, 30s, and then the large project that's 140 that kind of skews that data a little bit.
Okay, got it.
But at the end of the day, it's typically 6 to 8 units per property. And that's typically on a lot that's anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 square feet. So
6 to 10,000. So those aren't large, particularly large lots.
No, they're not.
So just the thumbnail of how we go from our usual kind of image of an ADU. So we deed restrict one and we get two. So how do we go up to 6 there? I guess I'm still
Yeah.
kind of not fully grasping that.
So you
jump.
get what you get by right. So again, and once we get in the program, we're going to do like for like as far as our deed restricted and our market rate. So you get your one by right, and that's typically the converge, like a garage conversion.
Okay.
Or converting a portion of the primary. So then we've exhausted our by right ADUs, and now we're going to utilize the bonus program. That's going to be, so your second ADU is deed restricted, your third ADU is market rate, your fourth is deed restricted, your fifth is market rate. And if you're within those transit areas, which is about 60% of the city here in San Diego, you're going to be able to do that indefinitely until you hit your caps on your floor area ratio and other things. And obviously there has been a lot of opposition to this. Primarily people thinking that they're going to be developers and buy up the entire block. The problem is, and I can tell, so when you said you have 46 projects, I don't have 46 projects. That's the number that are currently in process of the city. I've done about 15, right in that 12 to 15 range. And the largest we've ever been able to go is to a total of 10 units. But looking at those 12 to 15 projects, we have scouted over 2,000 properties to find those, 10 to 20 sites that would actually work.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily all just like the site doesn't work. It's obviously, market forces and all that kind of stuff. But the reason why this is so exciting is because there is no subsidy from the jurisdiction. It's a completely market-driven affordable housing production. And because of that, that's why there's the deed restriction lengths are shorter. They have to make sure that this pencils out. Otherwise, it's a program that doesn't work. So it's really an opportunity to, that's why I said like a revolving stock, as long as you're continuing to have new projects enter new projects getting built, you're going to always have those in the pipeline.
Yeah, got it. Right, indeed. So very different than the standard 1 or 2 that we imagine. And so if I heard you right, then floor area ratio is kind of setting the upper limit there. They can only cover so much ground. Yeah. Okay.
And so
I think that's really helpful to understand in that sort of difference.
And so we really look at it as equitable housing policies. So it's not that I can build more space than anyone else can. It's not that I can build taller or closer to property lines than anyone else can. It follows all the same development standards for that single family home. So for someone like Phil, who's utilizing that single family home as a community, you're going to have the same number of people in a single family home that Phil's working on as we will in this bonus program. The only difference is that it's multiple units versus one large single family home. So it's really about creating equitable housing policies that provide the opportunity for the same kind of treatment for rental units as it does for the single family homeowner.
Got it. Thanks, Jared. Okay. Yeah. So we'll have more questions. We already do in the chat box for you. So we'll get back to those shortly. But before we get to questions, I'm going to introduce Celeste Goyer, Executive Director at Casita, to describe one more project in my near vicinity in Atascadero in San Luis Obispo County that Cal Coastal Builders is working on. And so Celeste, thanks for joining in to describe this small house community.
Yes, and it's one that you and I have been tracking for a little bit because it has such exciting potential for home ownership at affordable rates. So our fourth presenter today is having some login issues, and they may be able to jump on, possibly not, but I did want to share a little bit about their project. The company is called Cal Coastal Communities, And they have a number of projects going. Their first flagship project in the small home community was called Grand Oaks Paseo, and it is a cottage community with small homes that are built to, I'm just going to show their website here. They're built from the ground up, stick-built homes and designed by RRM Architects in San Luis Obispo. And they are in the $200,000 and $300,000 range, which is a remarkable achievement for the current cost challenges we find ourselves in today. So here's some examples of their small homes. You can see that there are, they have the details on how many per lot, but they range from single story to 2-story, and they're beautifully done. And this has attracted the attention of a number of others who are interested in partnering with Cal Coastal to create more projects like this. I encourage you to go to their website at calcoastalcommunities.com and look around. Again, this is in
And it
Paso
looks
Robles,
like Jack
California.
is here now, so.
Great. Okay. Jack, I'm going to turn it over to you then. I'm going to stop share here. Or is this Ted?
Jack or Ted, do we have you?
Yes, good news is you have both of us. You have Jack and Ted. So you're getting the 2-for-1 today. But Celeste, thanks so much for sharing and your introduction. And pleasure. Really appreciate the invitation to join your webinar this morning. And it's just really excited to be surrounded by like-minded housing advocates. I love to see what other people are doing and how creative others are being in the housing space. I love what Phil presented on co-living. I mean, that resonates with our hearts, especially when it comes to having an integrated community, both age and background and that sort of thing. So really cool. I also love the idea of fractionalized ownership, because I think for us in California, ownership is going to be critical to support our local economies and provide financial security. So with that, let me see if I can't pull up our presentation. Let's see.
Okay, and so Ted, we're glad to have it for a couple minutes.
Okay.
So I'll just cut you off when we're ready for some questions if we're out of
Okay.
time, depending on how we go on time, because I know we have a lineup of questions here. Thanks.
Understood. I mean, can you see what our presentation? Can you see our screen?
No,
Not yet. No.
Okay. All right.
Here we go. It's coming up.
All right. Very good. So basically, what I've done over the years, I've worked for very large home builders. I've done really large housing tracts, and I've been studying housing for a long time. And so what we realized was that through density, kind of like what was being described by Jared, through density, you can achieve some really good results. And so what we realized was we have 30 units that are being planned on 1.7 acres, and maybe we only make $50,000 a unit, but we're putting 4 more units per lot than you would if you just did a regular single family home. So here in San Luis County, all the new houses, single family homes, they go from 8s, 9s, and millions, and we're selling our houses in 3s, 4s, and 5s, so about half the price. And yeah, we're making less per house, but we're doing 3 times more houses or 4 times more houses per area. So we actually make 1.5 times more than the traditional housing developer, and we're hitting a larger portion of the income demographic. And this just kind of shows you how it lays out, right? So in one area you can get 4 houses, and we're able to get 8 with a common park space. So, and then what does that look like from a tax base? That was a question that came up when we were talking to county supervisors, and you actually get more tax per area than you would if you were doing these really high-end luxury homes. So I think that's really important too, because that again is supporting our local county. And, our next slide is, do they look good? Do they fit within existing neighborhoods? We say yes, similar to ADUs, they do as well. They're very attractive and they give character. So with that, I think that's kind of the 1 minute version. That's kind of the concept behind what we're doing. And we really hope that this can be a new housing model for California. We did build starter homes back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. But since then, we've gone away from it. In fact, our county had an ordinance in the planning department saying you couldn't build a house less than 1,200 square feet, which is, that's starting to change. But that's the concept. That's why we're doing what we're doing. And we hope to see more of these types of communities pop up all across California and the United States.
Ted, thanks for that.
Sure.
I had the opportunity to drive through the project for the first time last weekend, so it was nice to see the first phase occupied and people in.
Yes. Yeah, people love it. The residents living there, they love it. And so we're excited to get it done. Hopefully in the next 6 months, we're pushing all our construction crews over and, we're going to get it buttoned up. And then once it's completed, we'd love to have anybody who wants to see it come and join us and, have a tour.
Great. Thanks, Ted. Okay, so with that, we're going to open it up to questions. We have several that have come in, so I'm going to get right into those from participants. I hijack in the background. Okay, so let's start with a question for Phil. It's actually a bundle that have come in from different people. And so, Phil, we have questions for you regarding intended lifespan of Radish, and along with that, the governing body that you set up, and how you maintain equitable treatment between your 3 categories of investor, resident, and renter and owners. So please do share a little more information. I think will be helpful to everybody on those components of the co-living.
Yeah. So we set 2 important principles when we started Radish that I think have really served us. And they come with trade-offs, but I think they're principles that have really made the community possible from like a financing and investor perspective. So one of them was that Radish was not going to be a forever place. It was going to be a 5 to 10 year experiment, and that within 10 years we were going to sell it. And the reason it was important to say this up front is because we are taking money from people, and we can only do this if we can get money from people. And it's really hard to go to people and say, can you put in money into this and you'll get your money back? I don't know when. That's not a very good proposition. So
we've had a similar challenge with a local co-living project. That sounded kind of nice until anyone thought about it for a minute. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's a really helpful, like, simplifying principle, and comes with the trade-off, which is it can't last forever, but it does allow us to actually raise money into a project like this. And the sort of second principle that's been really helpful for us is how do we set rents? So everyone that lives here pays rent. Some people live here are financial investors, some are not. And so, it's really hard to sort of say it. And so like in a normal housing situation, the landlord just tries to charge as much as possible. But this is a community, people wear multiple hats. So we need like a principle that allows us to set rents. And so what we basically said is we're gonna try to target a 5% return on equity for all the investors every year. And that sort of lines up with like a pretty like average, financial return that you might get if you're just like a real estate investor. Not remarkable, just sort of, medium one. And so the whole community knows that this is the principle that we're going to set rent on the basis of. And so we just publish all the books to everyone, and we're like, here's the income, here's the expenses, here's the amount of equity we have in the project, and therefore here's what rent needs to be to achieve these things, the 5% return.
So you're very transparent about that as part of your set process.
Exactly. And when people come in, they understand this is the principle. And we can have conversations with residents on trade-offs and things like that. And in terms of governance, it's a big complicated question, but essentially we have 2 layers of governance. So the first layer is basically the owners of the property, who are the people that put money in. And so that is governed like very much like a traditional LLC, where like the shareholders essentially vote on things. And the sort of decisions that fall into this bucket are like, do we refinance? Do we build a new unit? When do we sell? Sort of like the big property decisions. The second layer of governance is the community. So it's like the people who are living at the property right now. And what they really determine is what like day-to-day life at the property is like. And that governance system is a lot more fluid. It's a lot more sort of trust-based. There's like fewer rules, there's less process. Most of the decisions happen in that layer that actually affect people's lives. So like, what sort of food are we going to stock? What sort of internet are we going to get? Do we paint that wall yellow or pink? These sort of questions. And so we're not like putting this up for like big formal votes. This is like a community that is making these decisions informally on their own. And that's most decisions. And then this is the sort of stuff that most people care about, is sort of this like day-to-day stuff. It's not the like refinancing sort of stuff.
Thanks for that, Phil. I think that's helpful for people to understand that sort of reasoning for that time frame. So I take it that 5-year, 10-year time frame you picked is what people were comfortable with committing the funding to, is what set that sort of framework then.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's also a principle here of like, I have a personal belief that people actually stay in their homes too long, especially in California. They get like stuck in their homes. And I think there's a healthy exercise of like reevaluating your lifestyle every summer number of years. And so it's actually a forcing function for everyone in this community to be like, do we want to keep doing something like this, or do we want to do something different? And it sort of forces us to do that every 10 years, which I think is actually a healthy thing in people's lives.
Yeah, thanks for that, Phil. Agreed. Okay, why don't we take one to Jonathan? Jonathan, we've got a question on time and cost for your ADUs. I know that's maybe a question for everyone, generally kind of where it lands, both time to get the ADUs or homes built, and where the prices land to build it and to rent it out. So what have you seen with the project's ADUs portion of your projects you've been working on?
Yeah, I think I gave an initial response to Lonnie. Thanks for the question. In some ways, I'd say we're kind of still sourcing that, because this will really be the first project from the ground up where we're going to have an ADU plan from the beginning. We've currently budgeted, I think, for this relatively thinly budgeted project in Monterey County, but we're looking to have larger ADUs, and than we've previously used, to kind of in the hopefully in the 2-bedroom range. So we're hoping to work within the kind of 150 to 200 range for some good small family sized units there, but that will stretch us. In the past, the units we've acquired and worked with before, we've done much sort of simpler, kind of almost in the tiny home range, with other partners here locally that have been significantly obviously less than that. So these will be a little bit more substantial and larger units, and that's our projection. In terms of timeline, it's varied a lot with the different plans and size of the space. But for this project, we will be working. We are launching and purchasing the homes in Monterey County in the next 3 months, and hope to have the project completed, or at least initial phases completed, in about 9. So we'll see. We're kind of new to the ground up part of it. So
thanks, Jonathan. And Jack or Ted, you're still on. What about sales prices at Grand Oaks Paseo? What have your first small units been selling for?
Yeah, so I think our most affordable unit was at about 320. For a brand new home, beautiful home. They're almost, we call them our baby custom homes, because we have all 2x6 frame, framing. It's just the finishes are like what you get in an upgraded home. I mean, they're what we wanted people to understand was that affordable by design doesn't necessarily have to equate to being cheap. So we wanted people to feel like, most people, they walk in, number one, they're wowed by the quality of the house. And number two, we ask them how big is it? And people always guess about 1,200 square feet. And really our smallest home is about 720, and our largest home is like 960. So the fact that they're thinking it's almost the size of what a traditional home is, a smaller home, we think is a very positive response.
Yeah, great, thanks. I'm hearing 320 is the lowest cost home in our
Yeah.
county or the area there that has a median of 7 now, or in that area, 7 to 8
Yeah,
median homes.
that's correct. And I think our highest sold for like 535.
Okay.
But
Even your larger is well under median price
Yeah.
there. Yeah, wonderful to hear. Ted, I see another question while you're right on. Did you have to get any zoning changes from the city there? And what about common space, community space in the complex with small homes?
Yeah, so great questions. We went in for a specific plan overlay. So it was already a mixed use property, but the city worked with us. I think, it's on El Camino, which is their commercial corridor. And so they wanted commercial along the frontage, which allowed us to do the residential in the back, versus I think there was a plan prior, was this big, condo monstrosity with, it was commercial along the bottom, and, they were going to do these luxury condos, and, I ran the numbers, there's no way that was going to be profitable. So, and it wouldn't really, these communities they're beautiful. There is community space. So like pocket neighborhood or pocket park, it's a pocket neighborhood with a pocket park in the middle. There is a community center that was approved, although, guys, let's be honest, we're building right now. This is probably one of the hardest time to do construction projects, in the last 100 years, right? We just went through a 1 in 100 year event. So our supply chains are still, everything's wacky. Labor is still tough. Financing is a challenge.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So some of that's a little bit uncertain, and I know since the project isn't fully developed, then some of those common spaces are ahead.
Yeah, the park, we're definitely committed. The park's going in no matter what.
Okay.
There's got to be a common area. And I think, kind of to what Phil's doing, if you looked at his property, he has some community gathering spaces, fire pits, and, spas, although I don't think we're gonna do a spa, but I think we're going to do a fire pit, and there's going to be a park, and there's going to be seating, and we might do a rope swing. I don't know.
At least the outdoor
Yeah,
socializing
correct.
areas, then great.
Yeah,
great.
garden. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, with that, I want to move back to Jared, because there are some questions for Jared about housing, family housing price effects from the activities, where we're hearing 6, 8 units in the backyard. Any results or evidence on effect of single family housing prices in the area? You seen anything you can ferret out yet from that?
Yeah, so the question was specifically talking about outside of the transit areas, but I can talk a little bit about both, because really because of the deed restriction that is in this program, things like SB 9 are probably affecting speculation more than this program is.
Right, I understand. I think it's a little tricky probably this early on to ferret out which.
Well, and the market is changing so much that, the prices are all over the place.
Yeah.
So, there's other market forces that are affecting, first time home buyers from being able to get in. But, really quick, we were talking about cost, and, you typically look at affordable housing and you look at the costs associated with those units, and it's astronomical compared to what a market rate construction is. It's easily double, triple. So, the average in San Diego for a 1-bedroom affordable house, like for a affordable housing unit, 1 bedroom is around $500,000 to build. The project that we did first, and I'll throw this is just, the apartments.com listings. You guys can see what it looks like. But it's other than the land costs and to purchase the property, the construction costs all in for 4 1-bedroom units, a garage conversion to a studio, and renovating the primary was right around $750,000. So when you look at that compared to, the cost for, you're getting 1.5 units and, in traditional affordable housing construction costs. So it's the fact that there's no subsidy makes this a really easy program to utilize market forces and utilize the market prices for construction.
Right. I hope everyone understands that distinction then, that I guess with the exception, Jonathan's organization is getting some home key and other government subsidy, but the rest of you then are developing with private funding. Right? So that's outside of the subsidy realm. So that is really important to think about what can be done. And some home ownership being provided at Grand Oaks Paseo. And Jonathan, all of your organizational homes are rentals. You're not promoting ownership or trying to get pass along housing
not with these specific projects that we're discussing here. Yeah.
Okay. And then Phil, how about as the years go along, what year are you into with Radish? So there must be talk of transition or what's next?
Yeah, we're 4 years in.
Okay.
So we still have a little while. We're still building here. We're building two new units.
Okay, so that's still the part of the process. And then what's next? So it may be helpful to hear from Ted. Do you have some more similar housing projects ahead? We've heard a little Jonathan's working more on scaling up and focusing on the ADUs. Ted, do you have another similar small home project in the works?
We have other properties right now. We have about 30 or 40 acres that we currently own in various sites. But honestly, with where we're at in the economic environment, we may be holding off for a little bit just to kind of see where things go. Unfortunately, as the Fed continues to raise rates, for us to do a forced sale project, it makes it challenging. If you do rental, you're fine because you can amortize it out over 30 years, but when you're gonna, but I do love, I've been really looking at doing I love this co-housing idea. And I think what we're looking at doing is we have one site where we can do 20 multifamily homes. So that gets us 60 bedrooms. But I'm thinking what I want to do is but that means I got to build 20 kitchens. I got to build 40 bathrooms if I'm going to do a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. But if I could create more of a co-living building, more like a college dormitory, if you will, where because bedrooms are cheap for me to build. They're 10,000 to 15,000 a pop, whereas bathrooms are 20,000 and kitchens are 40. So if I can reduce the numbers of those and do more shared space, kind of to what Phil's doing, I think, and then we do want to provide an ownership opportunity. I love the idea about having the flexibility through rent, have a different entity who actually is the ownership, the LLC, and then
Ted, I'm sorry I have to cut you off. We're out of time, but let's talk more about co-living in San Luis Obispo, since that's also something SmartShare is working on. I want to thank you all. We're at our hour time limit, and I have to thank everyone and let people know of some upcoming events. First of all, thank you, Jared, Jonathan, Phil, and Ted for your presentations. So we are out of time, and we invite other small housing professionals and community-based organizations and homeowners to add your voices and join the conversation by becoming members or donating to Casita Coalition at casitacoalition.org. You'll find lots of resources on the website, including guidebooks on garage conversions, ADU finance, multifamily ADUs, and more. You'll also find links to our webinar library and YouTube channel, so you can refer these videos to people you know. and more resources for both ADU professionals and homeowners. Join us for next month's webinar on Friday, November 18th. We'll look at community land trusts then. On Saturday, November 19th, we're in downtown Los Angeles for an ADU homeowner resource fair. Keep up to date on all of it by joining our mailing list or becoming a member at casitacoalition.org. Thank you all, and we'll see you next month.